And whenever that there is some opposition to achieving what desire we want, there comes the expression of anger. So kama yesha krodha yesha rajoguna samudbhavaha. So Krishna has simplified it like this, that this anger, desire and anger, that consumes us, mahashana, it consumes us and it leads us to do sinful things. And we don't see this anger, this desire openly, because it is not something visible. It's a phenomena. It is not visible to us. And he gives 3 examples, like smoke clouds covers the fire, and then dust covers a mirror, and the fetus is covered by the amniotic bag. So these 3, they are shrouding the what is the content inside, like that. This desire itself is being covered by in our body. Who is that? Okay. Avrutam jnanameteno jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha. So this desire covers the jnana like this. So the jnana means ability to look at it this way. There are different levels of jnana we can think of. At the lowest level, categorizing what is right or what is wrong, that is the lowest level of categorization. God has given us an intellect, and that intellect can be employed or utilized to determine what is right and what is wrong. And this intellect has to be, as we evolve, has to be continuously updated with new information. Say, at some point when we were children, we had a certain level of intellect, and then as we grow to adult, we have accumulated more knowledge, and that knowledge helps us to do certain things, do it or not do it, like that. Therefore, this intellect has to be updated every day in our life to do the right thing and categorize the right from the wrong. And categorization of the right from the wrong happens by comparing the information that is coming with the information that I already have in my chitta, that is the storage, and then make a determined effort to do the right thing and not do the wrong thing. That is the jnana. So this ability to categorize is being shrouded by this desire. That is what is in the 39th verse. And then, where does this desire sit? What is the locus of this desire? Krishna says, because desire per se, as I said, is not a physical entity. So it has somebody else supports this within our body. There is an agency that supports this desire. And what are they? Krishna says, Indriyani manobuddhi asya adhishtanam uchyate. The sense organs, the mind, and the intellect are the residence places for this desire. First, it is at the, sense organ level. And then if I somehow want to, turn my eyes somewhere else, the mind in me says, see that. So there is a, mind can either be a friend or mind can be an enemy. And the mind is another residence of or the support for desire. And like that, the intellect. I said intellect has to be updated. If my intellect is not updated properly, the categorization is based on my previous intellect, and that could be wrong because things have changed over time. So like this, the intellect also becomes the seat of this desire. This is where we stopped last class. So let's move on to the next verse. Having said that the indriyas, the sense organs, mind and buddhi are the seat of this desire, now Krishna in the next instruction, he says Tasmat tvam indriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. So this desire, Krishna says, first you control this. Tasmat tvam adav indriyani niyamya. Therefore, first controlling your sense organs. He prajahi, because certainly destroy, he is used in different senses. Here, the he is to emphasize. So, prajahi, you certainly destroy the enam. Which one? Enam, papmanam, jnana, vijnana, nashanam. This desire, which is sinful, which is the destroyer of the wisdom, because it shrouds, we have seen that in one of the earlier verses, that is in 38, this the knowledge is shrouded, 38 and 39, knowledge is shrouded by this desire, and therefore, if the knowledge is shrouded, means the intellect is unable to make the right decision, and therefore it is called the destroyer of the wisdom. So, this is imperative, Krishna says, by using the word tasmat. Tasmat, therefore, you have to, in order to, if you don't want to be a prey to this desire which is sinful, then you start controlling it at different levels, at the sense organ level, at the mind level, and at the intellect level. So like this, his instruction, we will see what the commentators help us understand this better. So this being so, that the sense organs and the intellect and the mind are the seat of this desire, you take into control the sense organs right in the beginning, and you abandon this sinful enemy driving you into sinful acts. It is the desire that that doesn't help you make the right decision. Therefore, that's the first place where you have to start. So the desire is not a physical entity. If it's a physical entity, it is probably easier to manage it for us, but it is not a physical entity. It kind of hides somewhere in our body, like the mind, intellect, and the sense organs, so cannot be directly apprehended or confronted. If an enemy is standing in front of us, we can manage, we can probably fight that enemy. But if it is hiding, see, in the Ramayana class we saw the other day, Ravana resorted to fighting by his supernatural means, becoming invisible, and Sugriva could not do anything because wherever he sees, there is no Ravana, but he appears in some other place like that. So this enemy is like that we are unable to see this enemy, and therefore cannot be directly apprehended or confronted. Therefore, Krishna says you have to punish these entities, the sense organs, the mind, and the intellect. You have to punish them to protect yourself from this desire. And how do you punish them? You ask these sense organs, the mind and the intellect, to attack the desire and overcome it. They overcome that desire, because that is those are the three places where desire could sit, and you manage those three desires. You command their support, and then you'll be able to make progress in avoiding this desire or controlling this desire. Now, jnana vijnana nashanam, he says. What is this jnana and vijnana? Let's try to understand this. So the enemy is the destroyer of theoretical knowledge and experiential knowledge. This theoretical knowledge is what is called jnana, and the experienced knowledge is called vijnana. So jnana is an intellectually categorized understanding of right and wrong. You need a means to say which is the right and which is the wrong. And that categorization of right from wrong happens in the intellect, and that is jnana. Now, there is one more level we can go, is this jnana can be also, in the previous bullet, we talked about the desire, effect of desire when it comes to jnana. Now, there is one more level we can think of Atma and Anatma. Our goal here is to experience the Atma, and the Anatma becomes an obstruction. Anatma means anything that is not Atma. Atma is one, that single awareness, that conscious entity, and that Anatma, then we have to describe, if Anatma is not useful to me, I have to start discriminating what is Atma and what is Anatma, and understanding what is Anatma, and get rid of that Anatma, or be indifferent to that Anatma. So this categorization is another level, discriminated understanding of the concept of Atma and Anatma through the instructions of the scriptures and the Guru. We have been studying this Atma and Anatma for all these up to where we are now, and we are going to study this all the way through the 18th chapter. In spite of that, even in spite of studying it 3 times, 4 times, half a dozen times, we still, our inertia of treating Anatma as something useful is there for the multiple lives, not just in this life, life after life after life. We have been indulging in this Anatma, and it is very difficult to shake it off. So, but anyway, that categorization we have to make between the Atma and Anatma. Now, having known what is Jnana, now Vijnana is experiencing the discriminated understanding. Now, for example, in science, if you say, you put a hypothesis, that becomes the Jnana. And when the hypothesis is, you set up an experiment to prove the validity or prove the non-validity of that particular hypothesis, then you set up an experiment, and the experiment can prove it or not prove the hypothesis. Either way, it becomes Vijnana then. If the hypothesis proved right, it becomes Vijnana that the hypothesis is correct. And if the hypothesis is not supported, that also becomes Vijnana, that so on. So if this, example is given, Edison tried 120 different material filaments in designing his or inventing his light bulb. And then he was very persistent. His supporters, his lab technicians and all, they will say, give up, let us give up. It's not working. We have tried 120 materials, filaments. Then Edison, it seems, said, what do you mean? Now we know that 120 does not work. So he moved on to 121 or whatever, some number. And then he was able to invent the light bulb. So like this, it becomes Vijnana. Even the negated hypothesis becomes Vijnana. And applied to our subject matter here, the discriminated understanding of Atma and Anatma, once I experience that Atma, that becomes Vijnana. So Jnana is what we are now trying to understand. And Vijnana becomes when we personally experience that Atma is the only entity, that I am the Atma and not the Anatma, not this body and all, then it becomes Vijnana for us. So Vijnana is experiencing those teachings. So this Jnana Vijnana Nashanam, what does this do? This desire, it destroys both Jnana and Vijnana. First it destroys Jnana. It doesn't help me to get to the right way, the right path. And once I don't get to the right path, there is no way, even Vijnana is beyond me. And even if I should know the right, okay, I know this is right, but in practice, I fail to implement it, then it is Vijnana Nashana. So there is a Jnana Nashana and Vijnana Nashana, both, but destroyer of both Jnana and Vijnana. First, destroyer of Jnana, unable to understand it. The second is destroyer of Vijnana, and after having understood it, unable to implement it. So those is the Jnana Vijnana Nashana, because you have to implement it to experience it. So that becomes a Vijnana Nashana. So both Jnana and what happens If both jnana and vijnana are destroyed, then ashreyas, that is the moksha, the liberation from the cycle of birth and death, that is in jeopardy. Both jnana and vijnana are the source of shreyas or the moksha, and therefore abandon desire, which is the root cause of all our problems. Krishna says, okay, the time for you to abandon this desire itself. Okay, let's learn this. Tasmat tvam indriyani adau.
Tasmat tvam indriyani adau. Tasmat tvam indriyani adau.
Niyamya bharatarshava.
Niyamya bharatarshava. Niyamya bharatarshava.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava.
Papmanam prajahihi enam.
Papmanam prajahiyenam.
Prajahihi enam.
Papmanam prajahiyenam.
Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Jnana vijnana nashanam. Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam.
So 39 to 41. Avritam jnanametena jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha indriyani mano buddhi asyadhisthanamuchyate yetairvimohayatyeshah jnanamavrityadehinam. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau. Niyamya bharatarshava. Papmanam prajahiyenam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. So having said that Indriya, Manas and Buddhi are the seeds of desire and you use them to overcome this desire, in the 42nd verse, he gives the order. In the order in which they can be practiced. Indriyani paranyaho, indriyebhya param manaha, manasastu para buddhihi, yo buddhehe paratastu saha. Says indriyani parani ahuhu. See, there's a comparison here. And in the comparison, normally there are two entities, but he starts with Indriyani. So what is being, we have to supply the missing one. So we have to look at it as the body, the physical inert body. So the sense organs are said to be superior to the body, the physical body. Indriyebhyaha param manaha. Indriyebhyaha, the sense organs, compared to the sense organs, manaha param, the mind is superior to these sense organs. And then manasaha tu para buddhihi, even compared to the mind, the intellect, buddhi is superior to this manas. And yo buddhehe parataha tu saha, it, the Atma, is said to be even superior to the intellect. So there's a gradation in our ability to manage this desire. At different levels we can manage, and that is what this verse is describing. It is said that the sense organs are superior to the body, and the mind is superior to sense organs, the intellect is superior to mind, and the self is superior to the intellect. First, we can try to control the desire at the sense organ level. We don't want to use a higher resource like mind for controlling something inferior like desire. That is the idea here. So mind can be used for something else if the sense organs are able to manage the desire. If the sense organs are unable to manage the desire, then you go to the mind level. And mind should try to withdraw the sense organs back. And that is the next level. If the mind also fails, then intellect has to really put its step down and say, no, this is wrong. You don't do this. That's the how the intellect is superior to the mind. And the self, the jivatma, my total personality, if you will, that is superior to the intellect also. Therefore, this order Krishna gives us to help us manage this desire. So the scholars posit that the sense organs, 5 sense organs like ear, etc., they are being interior to the body. See, the outside body is the physical body. The sense organs are interior to the body, and therefore, and they are more subtle also compared to the body itself. The sense organs are subtle. We'll talk a little more about this being interior. More subtle and more pervading. For example, the body can pervade only in the footprint of my body. But the sense organs, my eyes can see something beyond my footprint of the physical body. The ear can hear a sound coming from somewhere else like that. So the sense organs are more subtle and more pervading. And because they are more subtle and more pervading, they are superior to the external body. The external body is limited in its scope of the footprint of the body itself. So the sense organs are propagators of these transactions of the body. So the body cannot manage anything unless the sense organs help it, and therefore the sense organs become superior and a place to confront the body. So the sense organs are therefore superior to the body, being the manager of the transactions. Therefore, the sense organs are superior to the body. Likewise, the mind of the nature is of the nature of sankalpa vikalpa, they say. Sankalpa means ability to do this way. We do a sankalpa when we want to do a puja, we do a sankalpa. I'm declaring I want to do this today. We do that in Sankalpa, in the first thing in the morning. When I get up, I look at my schedule and say, okay, I want to do this, accomplish this today. That is Sankalpa. The mind can do it, but the sense organs cannot do that. So mind is that level, one level higher than the sense organs. And Vikalpa means the mind can also know information coming from other outside of me, and with the help of the intellect decides something about that information. So the sense organs only provide the information, but the mind has the ability to analyze that information. So that is called Vikalpa, the knowledge of the external objects. When I see something, a tree, information comes to me from my eyes that there is something like this information. It doesn't, the sense organs don't know it is eyes, it is tree, but the information comes, and within my intellect, I try to manage that information. The mind sends it to the intellect. The intellect, having known in its database a tree being seen earlier or registered in the chitta, now when the intellect gives the information, it is like this: it has a trunk, it has branches, it has leaves, it has fruits, etc., etc. Then it confirms that it is a tree. So that is the knowledge of the external objects. This happens at every object outside. So the mind has an option to engage the sense organs or not engage with the sense organs. We know that for sure. So many times, like we are engaged in some action, and we do some other action, but afterwards, did I do that? That thought comes. It's like most simple example, I'm watching TV, or the children in particular, they are watching TV, you give them food, and the food goes through their system, but they would not register they ate the food. This happens to all of us. Therefore, the mind has to be present with the sense organs to capture that information. So again, it shows the superiority of the mind. So mind becomes a next level of my hierarchy of managing the desire, mind being superior to sense organs. Intellect is the, as we said earlier, has the ability to discriminate or categorize information. This is this information, this is this information. It can categorize. It can categorize between a tree and a plant, let us say. There's a difference between a tree and a plant. So it's the intellect that has that ability and not the mind. So therefore, it becomes superior to the mind. Why is it so? It is because it is more subtle compared to the mind. Manages the information provided by the mind, being subtler than the mind. It manages the information that comes to it from the mind by comparing with the stored information. So the intellect allows the mind to interact with the sense organs. The mind intellect can say, no, don't deal with that. And so many times we listen to our intellect and we don't deal with certain things. And that happens is the intellect telling the mind to not engage in certain activities. And therefore, the intellect is the master and the mind is the slave. To that extent, intellect is the superior one compared to the mind. Now, the Atma is superior to the intellect. This is where some difficulty comes in understanding this. We will see with a couple of pictures on this after this. So the Atma is superior to the intellect and all its sides. See, if you take the, let's say, telescope, the object is there, and the one that sees the object first is the object lens. In the telescope, you have the object lens and you have the eyepiece. Now, the object lens sees the object, and the eyepiece sees the object lens and the object. Like this, and if you extend that analogy, the sense object is seen by the sense organs. The sense organs is seen by the mind, and the mind is seen by the intellect, and the intellect is seen by the Atma. Intellect is per se, it is inert, but it is made sentient due to the Atma that we will see. We have already seen that in our past classes, but we will repeat that a little to some extent because there are so many new people here from the time we discussed it. Okay, so everything is a drishya or a sight for the Atma, because there is nothing beyond Atma, and Atma because sees everything. Atma is not seen by anything. My intellect cannot see the Atma, whereas the Atma will see the intellect. It's a one-way traffic like that. The mind cannot see the intellect. Intellect sees the mind. The sense organs cannot see the mind, but the mind sees the sense object. So there is a distinction between what can be seen and what cannot be seen. And to that extent, Atma being able to see everything from the intellect, mind, sense organs, sense objects, everything. So the Atma is the supreme. And that supreme, if you have to manage desire, that Atma has to, if that Atma has to be brought into picture, so be it. You deploy that Atma to control your desire. That is the ultimate message here. Atma is the master and the intellect is its servant. By being the master, you manage this intellect and the succeeding entities like mind and sense organs. So where all these three, intellect, mind, and sense organs are the seats of desire. So by this, the sense organ cannot manage the mind. The mind cannot manage the intellect cannot manage the Atma, whereas the Atma can manage the intellect can manage the mind, and the mind can manage the sense organs. So this is the hierarchy or the order. So the desire, what happens is, it dilutes the intellect. And the Atma, which sees this delusion of the intellect, is superior to the intellect. We will understand this a little more. Atma is superior to everything. So it's at the intellect level that confusion arises, whether this is right or wrong. Now, we said earlier, the mind, the intellect being inert, does not have the ability by itself to make a decision this is right or wrong. It needs a conscious support, and that conscious support is coming from the Atma. That is why Atma is said to be superior to the intellect. Atma is my consciousness, my sentient part of me. There is the Atma, Anatma we said earlier. Anatma is inert, Atma is sentient. So the Atma, Anatma together is what we call here, in this particular case, the Atma or the Jivatma. That becomes clear in the following picture. We had seen this picture before. This is very contextual to discuss this a little more. You got the 5 sense organs, and here are the sense objects, let us say. And then these sense organs collect the information. Now, this is what is called Linga Sharira, or for this moment, you can consider this as an app. So this app has 5 sub-apps in it. An app for sight, an app for hearing, an app for taste, an app for touch, and another one for smell. So these apps are able to, what we have outside, these are external openings in our body. These are not per se the sense organs. The sense organs is the one, that app that I am talking about is this sense organ. The ability to get a certain information, put it in a certain format, and then send it to mind. The that putting it into a certain format is what that capability of this sense organs is. Same thing, like if you when you send a text message, what in your phone you send a text message, but there is an app within the telephone company that takes that app, that message, and puts it in a certain format and sends it to another location. This happens between the mind and the sense organs. This app collects the information, sends it to mind, and the mind has, itself cannot determine, but it can decide on the information, but it cannot decide on the type of information. It seeks the help of the intellect with the help of the storage, like we said earlier, how a tree is identified. And then that is being registered as so and so. Now, if you see something, you have to do something with respect to that information, like taking it, collecting it, or going up to there or something like that. So that instruction happens through the prana. The prana is another app. So once it is decided that the prana has to come into a picture, what the prana does is, this is the prana app. You got 5 different kinds of prana. Prana, udana, vyana, samana, apana. They have different locations of in the body, operating centers. And then these pranas may give a message to the another app here, and therefore the prana drives the air through them, and then the various actions happen through the 5 motor organs. This is about general layout of our system here. And so what he said, Krishna is saying that the sense organs, mind is superior to sense organs, the intellect is superior to the mind. Excuse me. And we don't see the Atma here. We will see that in the next slide here. Now, this is the physical body we are talking, just the inert physical body. And then the 5 sense organs feeding into the mind. And the mind using the intellect. Now, at this point, this is what we have described as an Atma. It's a sentient being. Now, this Atma, very peculiar behavior of this is, if I give an example, you will see this better. You see, the light we cannot see. Light can be seen only when I put a hand and the light falls on the hand, and showing the hand, the presence of light is inferred. If I go to a dark space and put out my hand in the dark space, absolutely dark, pitch dark, the hand is not so seen. Therefore, the light per se cannot be seen, but it is manifested by my hand. Like that, the Atma cannot be seen. Atma is it's a non-doer, a kartrutva. There is no kartrutva in Atma. So this Atma, now this physical body that we are talking here, where I'm showing the cursor, is also useless, totally inert. It doesn't do anything. The Atma being sentient, still it doesn't act like the light. The sun coming from the light by itself does not do anything, but it helps the something else to be described by putting an object there or something like that. So like that, this Atma does not engage in any action per se. It is just there. Now when this Atma combines with this body, just like the light shows my hand, this Atma, the Atma is everywhere, and this Atma with the support of with the physical body, with the support of the Atma, it lights up the intellect, the mind, etc. Just like to give an example, another example, you have iron filings, iron filings, if you bring a magnet there, the iron filings get attracted, they move towards the magnet itself. Like that, this Atma, there also magnet does not move, it doesn't do anything, its presence is there. But the iron filings are made sentient by the presence of the magnet. Like that, by the presence of the Atma, this body, external and internal, everything is made sentient by the presence of the Atma. And this Atma, with the physical body and its all organs, is called a Jivatma. This is the Jivatma that Krishna is talking here when he says, Yo buddhehe paratastu saha. It is this Jivatma. This Atma is there. It is there. It doesn't do any transactions, but it is the combination of the physical body and the Atma that energizes the body to be able to perceive certain things. And this Atma is superior to this intellect. When he says the last part of the verse, Yo buddhehe paratastu saha. Now, how this Atma helps transaction itself not doing anything. The Vedanta is very, it gives examples galore to describe every situation. We discussed this example about a year ago, probably. And anyway, I will narrate that example for the benefit of those who have not heard. So those who have heard it, just bear with me. Now, the example goes like this. A person, he's a horse lover. He, as and when he could get some resources to buy a horse, he would buy a horse. So like that, he was continuously buying horses. Now, he had a will also. He had 3 sons. And his 3 sons, he wanted to distribute his property, whatever it is. And in the will, he wrote, the first son gets half the property, half the property, and the second son gets 2/3 of the remaining, and the third son gets 2/3 of the remaining. Half, 2/3, and 2/3. And he did say if there's anything left, what to be done, nothing was there, but this was his will. Now, one day, he has collected 17 horses like this. He dies after collecting 17 horses. And then they open the will, and the will says the first son has to get half the horses according to the application of the will to the situation. First son has to get half the number of horses, and they have 17 horses. They are stuck with a problem. They don't know how to move forward. Now, there comes a wise old man. He says, no, this is your problem, is it? I have a horse with me. I don't mind giving it to you if it can solve your problem. And these people were very happy. Okay, then we will take it. And so this is 17 plus 1, the 18th horse came into picture. The 18th horse, 18 horses, the first son gets the half the number of horses. He takes his 9. Now there are 9 horses left there. Now the second son is to get 2/3 of the remaining, 2/3 of the 9. So he gets 6 horses, and he goes away with his 6 horses. And then the third son would get 2/3 of the remaining. That is, we got 3 horses remaining now, 9 minus 6, 3. And out of the 3 horses, he takes the 2 horses that he is entitled to according to the will. And then he is happy, he is gone. This 18th horse remains as is without taking part in any transaction. The transactions are happening in dividing the number of horses at every stage. The horses, this 18th horse is this Atma. This Atma per se will not engage in any action, but it supports actions that are happening in this body and every human body, animal body, plant body, whatever it is. So this Atma is like that. It is a non-doer, but it is a supporter of doing. And that is what is happening in all our physical bodies. The physical body itself is not sentient, but it is made sentient by the presence of this Atma. Now, where is this Atma? Is it in my inside my body or outside my body? Atma is inside my body and outside my body. Like another example, you have space, like you have a pot, there is space inside the pot. Now you ask the question, is the space inside the pot or outside the pot? Or is the pot inside space or space inside the pot? Whichever way you can question that. But it comes out that space is inside the pot and space is outside the pot. Pot is inside space, pot is outside space, like that. So the Atma is all pervading, and it behooves many people, but even in a dead body there is Atma. In a dead body there is Atma, then why is that dead body is not moving? Because all these intermediate things are gone out of the body. What is called Linga Sharira, we said in the previous slide, that Linga Sharira leaves this body. At the time of death, a package leaves our body. And with this being removed, the Atma cannot Atma can interact with the intellect, which is intellect is the most subtle. Atma is subtler than the intellect, and this subtle intellect cannot interact with this physical body because all these they're not there. There is no life in this body because of that. Not because there is no Atma, but because these things are not there. That magnet example we gave, we can extend it a little further. If there is, let us say, a combination of iron filings and brass filings. Now, the iron filings get attracted by the magnet and they move. And as they move, they disturb the brass filings, and the brass filings also move. Per se, the brass filings don't move because of the magnet, but the brass filings move because of the movement of the iron filings. And like that, these the intellect you can compare with respect to the iron filings, and the Atma to the magnet, and the physical body is the brass filings. Only if these entities are there, the physical body can act. Otherwise, the physical body cannot act. This example, this one shows here that for the physical body to act, this app that controls the prana, that should be there. And that the one that is controlled by the prana should be there. If all this Linga Sharira, entire thing is what leaves our body at the time of death, and the physical 5 hours, eyes, lips, everything is in there in the physical body. But this app that runs these 5 sense organs is left the body, and therefore this becomes the link for the activities that happen. Atma doesn't do anything on this side. Atma doesn't do anything, but these Linga Sharira, this amount called, this entity called Linga Sharira, actually it is this much. Linga Sharira is the one that provides the link between the Atma and the physical body. Okay? All right, let's see if there are any questions later on, we'll look at it. And this is what Krishna says here. I have shown in the reverse way, this Atma is superior to this intellect. This intellect is superior to this mind, and this mind is superior to the physical body or the sense organs. So like this, I have shown it in the reverse way, just because the picture could accommodate only that way. So this is the very important verse that sheds a lot of light on our anatomy, our physical activities that have the dynamics that happen in the body. Okay, let's learn this. Indriyani parani ahuhu.
Indriyani parani ahuhu. इन्द्रियाणि पराणि आहुः
इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः
मनसः तु परा बुद्धिः
मनसः तु परा बुद्धिः मनसः तु परा बुद्धिः
यः बुद्धेः परतः तु सः
यः बुद्धेः परतः तु सः यः बुद्धेः परतः तु सः
मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः
मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः
इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः
इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः
40 to 42 इन्द्रियाणि मनो बुद्धिः अस्याधिष्ठानमुच्यते एतैर्विमोहयत्येषः ज्ञानमावृत्य देहिनम् तस्मात् त्वम् इन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानं प्रजह्येनम् ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम् इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्थभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्. This is the concluding verse of this chapter. So, evam buddhehe param buddhva. So, Arjuna, thus knowing the Atma to be superior to the intellect. Buddhehe param, having known this, buddhva, having known this, samstabhyatmanam atmana. Atmana atmanam samstabhya. Controlling the mind by the intellect. Durasadam kamarupam shatrum jahi. Jahi is to kill. Kill this invincible, durasadam, invincible enemy in the form of desire. Kamarupam. So the enemy in the form of desire is to be killed by you if you want to move further in your quest for vijnana. That is the ultimate goal. So he is saying here, you now control yourself, your desire, and the desire happens in two ways. Desire, in Arjuna's case here, desire to participate in the war, or not desire to participate in the war. Not desire is also included there, because that also becomes a desire in a certain way, because he is deviating from his dharma. So that is also to be looked here in this context, that because you are resisting to fight, you will be subject to this desire, which is in a negative sense, but still that will destroy your jnana and vijnana. Okay, let's see here. So, thus knowing that the Atma is superior, we have seen that through the picture, superior to the intellect, take into control your mind. By a well-trained mind, like there is in the mind, you can create what is called a supervisory mind. We do that so many times when we want to observe our mind. We use a part of our mind to be observer of the observed mind. And you can call it as intellect or part of the mind, doesn't matter. So you have to, he says, hold your mind by your mind. Means hold your lower mind by your upper mind. So this comes through the categorization of the sense organs, mind and intellect. Always the higher mind should be telling the lower mind to keep a watch on these sense organs, mind and intellect. Know the hierarchy, he says. No, this is the hierarchy. Atma can control the intellect. Jivatma can control the intellect. Intellect control the mind, etc. So that know the hierarchy. Now the Atma is birthless and deathless, but we do not try to understand it. There are two kinds of contrasts here. The body is time bound. We know that this body is going to drop off one day, and we try day and night to nurture this body. Whereas the Atma, the real me, which is birthless and deathless, I don't care much about it. I don't care about the Atma. I don't try to understand this Atma. I don't try to use my Atma to manage myself. So, but our effort is all in managing this body, which is anyway going to drop off one day. We are unable to take that into cognizance and manage this body. So I don't know who I am, but I know well what I am not. See, this is what is called adhyasa in Sanskrit. It's an error. And now because I don't know who I am, I start thinking I am the body, I am the mind, etc. If I know I am the Atma, then there is no question that the error would have happened. If I know 8 times 3 is 24, as soon as the child is asked 24, what is 8 times 3? It will say 24. If it doesn't know it is 24, it will probably try 34 or 14 or somehow it in his mind there is a 4 he thinks. But the error happens by not knowing 24. Like that, not knowing I am the Atma, I put my identity with the body and mind. So this body and mind I am not. That is what we need to have a very firm understanding of that. Therefore, we must revise our understanding that the Atma is supreme, subtlest, worth knowing about it, and not this physical body. The physical body is a tool given to us. If I use my telephone as a tool, I don't say I am the telephone. Likewise, if this body is a tool of the Atma, I should say the body is my a tool. I'm not the body, but we are unable to make that transition. So that how do we do it? Where do we start? Krishna says, sanctify the mind. Yes, at least a section of the mind, and then win over that lower mind using the higher mind. And how do you do that? By planting better samskaras. There is certain impressions in our mind at this point, and those impressions are helping us make decisions, but those impressions may be outdated. Now, in order to do the right thing, having known what Krishna has given us now I have to plant better samskaras, improved samskaras and impressions in my mind. And how do I do that? This is where the dharma comes into picture. We discussed in the last class that there are 10 values of dharma: ahimsa, satya, sastya, asteya, etc. We discussed in the. So practicing those aspects of dharma, I plant better impressions in my mind, and the better impressions will be able to help me control my lower instincts of the mind and the sense organs. So, Arjuna, may you slay this enemy in the form of this desire, who is very difficult to comprehend. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshe. So everything is in the mind. I can use the mind as a friend. I can use the mind as an enemy. If I use the mind as a friend, then I could use the mind as a resource to overcome bondage and accept liberation, reach liberation. So that way the mind can elevate us. Otherwise, seek the help of the intellect in determining what is right and what is wrong. So every step of the way, if we are able to manage different organs in that hierarchy, then we will be able to manage the desire. So through proper application of the intellect, replace current impressions with better impressions, we will be able to address this desire. With better impressions, the desire becomes less important, and therefore we don't put value to it. When we don't put value to it, we discard it, or we are very indifferent to that. Therefore, Krishna is saying the desire can take many forms, kama rupa, and prepare your intellect to recognize these multifaceted forms of desire and destroy that powerful desire. So I may think I have one kind of desire as something else. See, all the desire can be coming to us through all the 5 sense objects, through the 5 sense organs. And if I manage one of my sense organs is not enough, I have to manage all the 5 sense organs. That's the message that Krishna is giving us here. So that's the, in some substance, the summary of this particular verse, the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter. Okay, let's see. Evam buddhe param buddhva.
Evam buddhehe param buddhva. Evam buddhehe param buddhva.
Samstabhya atmanam atmana.
Samstabhya atmanam atmana. Samstabhya atmanam atmana.
This atmana is what reference to mind by the intellect. The mind is also recognized, described as an atma here. The intellect is also described as an atma, and that differentiate we have to make. Evam buddhe param buddhva samsthabhyatmanam atmana.
Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana. Evam buddhe param buddhva संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना
जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्
जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो
कामरूपं दुरासदम्
कामरूपं दुरासदम् कामरूपं दुरासदम्
जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्
जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्
एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्थभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्
एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो
कामरूपं दुरासदम् 41 to 43 तस्मात् त्वम् इन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानं प्रजहिह्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम् इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धे परतस्तु सः एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्थभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मयोगो नाम तृतीयोऽध्यायः. Let us read the fourth chapter, first verse, and then close it for today. अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः ज्ञानयोगः. श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगं प्रोक्तवानहमव्ययम् विवस्वान्मनवे प्राह मनुरिक्ष्वाकवे ब्रवीत्. Okay. If anybody have any questions, I will see if we can try to answer them. Okay. Okay.
I have a question, Ramakrishna ji.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand I clearly understand the Jivatma. So you were
Uh-huh.
saying that the Atma exists everywhere, and
Yes.
that can be even like in a stone or a pillow or a rug, anything like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because Atma pervades everywhere. Wherever space pervades, Atma pervades a space and goes beyond.
Okay.
Okay.
Then the interaction of the Atma with the Linga Sharira is the
Uh-huh.
Jivatma.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
correct? Okay.
Linga Sharira, Linga Jiva, you can put both. That's okay, no problem. Linga Sharira is generally described.
Okay. And the Linga Sharira is in that diagram you had showed, everything in
Yes.
that circular, that
Yes,
round.
a very internal functioning entity, if you will.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And it is this Linga Sharira that goes from one body to another. At my when I die, this Linga Sharira leaves this body. So leaving the body is called death, and this Linga Sharira goes in the environment and then mixes with clouds and it comes down as rain and comes down as with the rain it is deposited into the earth, and the food that we grow will absorb this linga sharira, and then it is consumed by beings. Depending on our karma, it could be a human body, it could be a different kind of body, a divine body, or so we get different kinds of bodies. Divine body doesn't come down to the earth level also. If I'm entitled to be a divine body like an Indra or Varuna or something, it gets resolved even before coming through the rain. And then otherwise, if I have a human body or an animal body or a plant body, that is according to my karma in the next life, this linga sharira finds its way to the appropriate parents like that.
When the Linga Sharira leaves our body, does it leave from the space, like the third eye, they say, between the two?
It could leave any opening of the body. It, if you have done a lot of punya, they say it goes through the murdha, it goes through the top of your head. There are different, there is no per se to say it goes through this part of the body or not. It can go through any of the opening of the body, like the eyes, ears, mouth, etc. The lower organs, all are possible exit paths for the Linga Sharira.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention that we are studying Ramayana also. Rama as an avatara, when he comes down to earth, he shows us how to cultivate these characters. Like he said, to win our lower nature by higher nature, which is what is demonstrated when we study the Ramayana. When he was about to be crowned as a crown prince, but the next, they were all ready in the morning to be coronated. And then he gets a call from his father and says, no, you have to leave here and you have been asked to go to forest. At that time, how he behaved, he did not let himself into a lower nature. His higher nature, his discrimination of saying, I need to follow the rules or the ethics, that he has to follow dharma and he has to make sure his father's words will come true. And he took that route and went to the forest. But when they go to, after the Shringaverapura, there it is said in the night, he does lament with Lakshmana, saying, see what happened, where we are, like that. That means to show that there is always a lower part which you feel, oh, this was not right for me, and I had some, I lost something or whatever our grievances are. But the people who have these higher nature, have really cultivated these characters are able to say, okay, suppress it and say, this is what the right thing to do at this time for me. So this is what I wanted to mention. Several occasions in Ramayana, probably in many people's life biography, great people's biography, we can see how they have conducted themselves in these adverse situations.
In Ramayana itself, Rama sometimes he is very angry. Like we recently studied that when the king of the seas was not willing to give way for him, he was ready to destroy the whole universe. He was ready to destroy the entire sea life by burning, drying up the ocean. But Lakshmana stops him. Then the king of sea stops him. So that lower instinct was there, even in an avatara but there, the way we have to understand is that he did it for as a role model. Like this is where we have to understand how Ramayana. He is fully, he knows that he is. Like a divine entity, but because that in 2-3 places he shows that, but he does not act like a divine being. He acts like a human being, because the purpose there is to show a path for human beings in times of difficulty. And if he says, "Oh, I'm a divine," like Krishna said, if I'm divine, then I will not follow. He's God, he can do, I can't do. It's, we kind of discount that. That is not the person, reason. That probably is the reason why he acted as human being every step of the way. And we see this Hanuman also has this lower instinct now and then. Particularly when he could not find Sita, he wanted to commit suicide. All these things we see, but they overcome it because they have better impressions in this stored in their mind, and they are able to overcome that. Okay, any other questions? There are a couple of new people I see here today. If you want to introduce, come on your video, and I see the Radha Kanuri and Uma Ganti. Can you show up? All right, don't want to. That's all right. We'll see you next time. Let's do the closing prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sarvam Shri